My name is Claire. I saved $15,000 for my wedding, kept it untouched for years, and trusted one person to leave it alone. One phone call proved that trust was a mistake. If something similar ever happened to you, tell your story in the comments. The credit union lobby was busy in the way it always was near the end of the month. People shuffled paperwork, a printer hummed behind the counter, and someone argued quietly about overdraft fees. I stepped up to the desk, slid my ID forward, and asked for the balance on the wedding fund. The clerk typed, paused, then typed again. She cleared her throat. "There's no money in that account," she said. The sentence landed flat, like a routine update. I asked her to check once more, not because I doubted her, but because that was the only response that fit the moment. She turned the screen slightly, pointed at the numbers, and nodded. 0. The clerk offered a small, professional smile and asked if I wanted a printed statement. Her tone suggested this was a normal question, one she asked dozens of times a day. I shook my head, stepped aside, and pulled out my phone. Linda answered on the second ring. "Hey," she said, already sounding occupied. "Did you touch the wedding account?" I asked. A short pause followed. Not long enough to be dramatic, just long enough to confirm the answer. "I used it," she said. "I needed a break." "For what?" "Hawaii." The word came out casually, like a grocery item. No build-up, no warning. She went on before I could respond. I was exhausted. I haven't taken care of myself in years. No apology followed. No explanation about timing or urgency. Just a statement of need delivered as fact. I leaned against the wall near the brochure rack and asked how long ago the withdrawal happened. "Last month," she said. "You weren't using it yet." That part wasn't wrong. The deposits had been sitting untouched for years. That detail mattered more to her than the reason the money existed. I asked when she planned to put it back. There was a faint laugh, more breath than sound. "You're young," she said. "You have time. Things work out." The credit union clerk called the next number. Someone stepped up to the counter with a folder tucked under their arm. The rhythm of the room continued without interruption. "I had a deadline," I said. "I needed that money this week." Linda sighed, the kind that signals inconvenience rather than concern. "You're focusing on the wrong thing," she replied. "I needed it more." The line stayed quiet for a moment, not disconnected, just held open as if waiting for acceptance. I asked again about repayment, this time more directly. "That's not realistic right now," she said. "You'll understand when you're older." The phrase ended the conversation. It always did. She didn't wait for a response before hanging up. I stared at the phone screen longer than necessary, then slipped it back into my bag. The clerk glanced over, her expression neutral, trained not to pry. When I returned to the counter, she asked if I wanted the transaction history printed or emailed. "Printed is fine," she added, already reaching for the button. The printer started up, feeding out page after page with dates, amounts, and a single large withdrawal that explained everything without commentary. She gathered the papers, stacked them neatly, and slid them across the counter. "Let me know if you need anything else," she said. I took the pages, folded them once, and held them while stepping away. The venue coordinator answered with a practice tone, the kind meant to soften bad news. Dates were released back into availability, the deposit was marked non-refundable, and a confirmation email arrived before the call ended. "I'm sorry," she said. "That's our policy." The line went dead, and the policy stayed. A few minutes later, I called Mark. He listened without interrupting while I explained what had happened to the account and what it meant for the date. "So we pause," he said, "just for a bit." "There's nothing to pause with," I replied. "The money's gone." Silence followed, heavier this time. He asked whether my mother planned to replace it. I said no. He asked when. I said there wasn't a plan. The conversation shifted into logistics, leases, invitations, what to tell people, and ended without an argument, which felt worse. By the next week, the word wedding stopped appearing in our messages. A month later, the messages stopped. Work continued as if nothing had changed. Spreadsheets waited. Delivery schedules updated themselves. A supervisor asked whether everything was okay after a report went out with missing numbers. "Just a busy week," I said. The answer worked. It always did. Tasks took longer to finish. Emails went unanswered until reminders popped up. Someone offered to proofread a document that usually went out under my name without comment. No one pressed for details. Performance reviews don't ask for explanations, only results. At home, the phone rang more often. Linda had talked. By the time the first aunt called, the story had settled into a version that required correction. She didn't steal it, my aunt said. She needed help. Another relative suggested mediation. Someone else recommended prayer. Each call ended with advice to keep the family together. No one asked where the money came from or why it had been touched. Responsibility shifted without discussion, landing neatly where it always did. "She raised you," one cousin said. "You owe her some grace." The calls stacked up, brief and insistent. Messages followed when they went unanswered. The word misunderstanding appeared often, as if a different explanation could refill an account. Therapy started the following week at a small clinic near Balboa Park. Intake forms asked about insurance. Self-pay circled back with a number written beside it. The receptionist slid a clipboard across the counter and pointed to a line near the bottom. "Payment is due at each visit," she said. Sessions stayed practical. Schedules, boundaries, what to say when relatives called. The therapist didn't ask about childhood. She asked what happened after the withdrawal and what happened next. Notes were typed while I spoke. The clock on the wall kept time without ceremony. At the hospital, paperwork brought me into contact with Daniel Reyes, a social worker assigned to handle administrative coordination. We sat across from each other while he checked forms and signatures. "This comes up more than people expect," he said, scanning a page. "Family funds, shared access, no clear rules." "What usually happens?" I asked. He shrugged. "Depends who controls the paperwork." There was no sympathy in his voice, just fact. He explained consent, authorization, and the difference between access and ownership. None of it sounded dramatic. All of it sounded final. "If it helps," he added, "long-term costs tend to show up later." At work, an HR email flagged an informal complaint. Nothing formal, just a note that someone had raised concerns about personal matters affecting performance. The meeting that followed stayed polite. Metrics were reviewed, expectations clarified, no accusations surfaced. The system logged the conversation and moved on. Family pressure intensified. Linda left a voicemail describing stress and fatigue. Another message followed, reminding me of sacrifices made years ago. The phrasing suggested a ledger, entries tallied long before the wedding fund existed. "I didn't think you'd react like this," she said during one call. "It hurts." The word landed where it was meant to. I asked again about repayment. She talked about timing, health, priorities. None included a date. Therapy bills arrived by email after each session, cleanly formatted with totals calculated to the cent. One afternoon, the receptionist handed over a printed invoice at the desk. "Payment due upon receipt," she said, tapping the line as if it might be missed. The call came during a weekday afternoon, sandwiched between a delivery update and a calendar reminder. Linda had been admitted overnight after collapsing at home. A nurse explained the situation in measured terms, then asked who would be handling financial authorization. "There isn't anyone else," she said, after a pause. "We'll need a point person." By the end of the call, temporary authority was assigned. Forms arrived by email within minutes, each one requiring initials, dates, and signatures. The system moved faster than the family ever had. At the hospital's administrative office, a staff member reviewed my ID and matched it to the file. Linda's name appeared on the screen, followed by tabs labeled Insurance, Billing, and Long-Term Planning. The cursor blinked patiently while she clicked through. "You'll want to review the retirement account," she said. "It's tied to medical expenses." A folder slid across the desk. The language was dry, almost reassuring. Health-related expenses, necessary care, approved disbursements. The range was broader than expected, defined by categories rather than limits. "So this can be used for ongoing treatment?" I asked. "Yes," she replied, "as long as it falls under care." Family members filled the waiting area, rotating through concern and instruction. One cousin insisted the paperwork be expedited. An aunt reminded me to stay calm. Another relative waved off the Hawaii trip as ancient history. "That's not the time to bring up old stuff," she said. "Your mother needs you now." Calls came in waves. Each one carried the same message with slight variations. Prioritize. Forgive. Move forward. The past had been recategorized as inconvenience. Daniel Reyes appeared later that afternoon carrying a tablet and a stack of intake sheets. He recognized my name before I said it. "You're listed as the financial contact," he said. "That right?" I nodded. He pulled up a chair and reviewed the documents without comment. His questions stayed focused on process rather than emotion. "Therapy counts," he said, scrolling through a policy summary. "Mental health falls under care." "Even if it's outpatient?" I asked. "Still qualifies," he replied. "The category doesn't change." There was no emphasis, no pause to underline the point. He spoke the way someone does when explaining a parking regulation. Useful, forgettable, precise. A nurse interrupted to ask about a copay. Another form required a signature. Pens accumulated on the desk, each one tethered by a thin cord. Linda woke briefly that evening. Her voice sounded thin but steady. "You're handling things, right?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Good," she replied. "Just make sure they don't cut corners." She drifted off before anything else could be said. The responsibility remained. Over the next few days, statements arrived. Insurance breakdowns, projected costs, retirement summaries. Numbers lined up neatly, each one justifying the next. The phrase health-related expenses appeared often, printed in the same font every time. Daniel checked in once more, this time to confirm documentation. "If you need the step-by-step guide, I can send it," he said. "That would help," I replied. The guide arrived as a PDF, complete with arrows and highlighted sections. It explained how to request disbursements, which boxes to check, which codes to use. No warnings appeared about moral considerations or family dynamics. Calls from relatives continued. One message suggested I reimburse the wedding fund later when things settled. Another framed the situation as an opportunity to heal old wounds. None addressed the account balance directly. At the hospital office, the clerk recognized me without looking up. "Same forms?" she asked. "Yes." She printed a packet and placed it in front of me, tapping the final page. "Sign here, initial there." I skimmed the instructions again. The wording stayed consistent. Therapy, care, eligible expenses. The lines weighted, blank and neutral. A notification buzzed on my phone, another reminder from the clinic about the next session, followed by an invoice number. Payment due upon receipt. The pen felt heavier than it should have, not from doubt, but from familiarity. This was paperwork, the same kind that had emptied one account without permission, the same kind now outlining options. I signed where indicated, dated the form, and handed it back across the desk. The clerk reviewed the pages, nodded, and added them to the stack. "We'll process this," she said. "You'll get confirmation once it's complete." The confirmation email arrived before breakfast. The subject line was neutral, almost friendly. Transaction completed. The body thanked me for using the system and confirmed the amount transferred. $15,000. No explanation, no warning, just a timestamp and a reference number. Another message followed seconds later, identical in tone, reminding me to keep the email for my records. At the hospital, Linda found out before noon. A nurse called me first, voice clipped. "She's asking for you," she said. "She's upset." By the time I reached the room, the tension had already spread. Linda was sitting upright, color back in her face, eyes sharp. A cousin stood near the window, phone in hand, ready to relay updates. "You took my money," Linda said the moment she saw me. The words came out loud enough for the hallway to hear. No greeting, no question. "It was for care," I said. "For you," she snapped, "not for me." A doctor paused near the door, checked the chart, then left without comment. The system had no interest in family disputes. That was my retirement, she continued. I trusted you. The phrase landed with weight, as if trust had only started that week. I reminded her of the authorization she signed. She waved it off. I didn't think you'd do this, she said. I thought you had more respect. A nurse returned to adjust an IV and asked everyone to keep voices down. Linda waited until the nurse stepped away. This is betrayal, she said, after everything I've done. Messages started coming in while she spoke. A sibling asking what happened, an aunt demanding an explanation, someone else suggesting the transfer be reversed immediately. Linda reached for her phone and dialed a number on speaker. There's been a mistake, she said when someone answered. My daughter moved funds without permission. The voice on the other end stayed calm. I see the authorization here, the representative said. It's valid. I was sick, Linda argued. I didn't understand. There's no provision for reversal once funds are dispersed, the voice replied. The transaction is complete. The call ended with an offer to email the policy. Linda stared at the screen, then threw the phone onto the bed. So that's it, she said? You ruin my future and walk away? Family members began choosing sides in real time. One cousin left the room without a word. Another stayed and shook her head at me. This didn't have to go this far, she said. It already did, I replied. That answer didn't help. Silence followed, thick and uncomfortable. Linda turned toward the wall, dismissing me without saying it outright. Outside the room, texts kept coming. Some asked for clarification. Others made their judgment clear. A few numbers stopped responding altogether. At the financial office downstairs, the clerk recognized the file immediately. She checked the status, then nodded. Processed and closed, she said. Linda had called them too. Notes were already attached to the account. The clerk read from the screen, careful to keep her voice even. She signed the authorization, she said. There's no appeal. Is there anything else she can do? I asked. She considered the question, then shook her head. Not through us. A printed notice slid across the counter, summarizing what I already knew. The language was polite, almost apologetic for something that couldn't be changed. Keep this for your records, she said. Upstairs, Linda tried again. This time the accusation shifted. You planned this, she said. You waited. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to clarify. The words had lost their leverage. By evening, the family thread went silent. A few contacts disappeared from my phone entirely. Others stayed, but without messages attached. At the clinic, the next therapy invoice arrived automatically, paid in full. The system updated the balance and thanked me for prompt payment. The receptionist glanced at the screen when I checked in. All set, she said. You're covered through the end of the month. Back at the hospital, Linda refused to see me. A nurse relayed the message with a shrug. She asked for space, she said. That space extended quickly. Calls stopped. Advice dried up. The role I'd played for years, reliable, agreeable, available, didn't transfer with the money. At the financial office one last time, I returned a badge and signed a final form acknowledging the end of temporary authority. The clerk stamped it and filed it away. You're done here, she said. Walking out, the realization didn't arrive as a dramatic thought. It showed up in smaller ways. No one left to explain things to. No account left to protect. No expectation to wait and absorb. The calls didn't slow down. They stacked. Missed numbers filled the screen before breakfast, each one carrying a variation of the same demand. Give it back. Fix this. Don't embarrass the family. Some messages were calm, others sharp enough to skip greetings altogether. One voicemail warned about legal consequences. Another focused on morality. You know what people are saying, an uncle said. This doesn't look good. At the hospital, Linda leaned into the story with energy she hadn't shown in days. Nurses heard it. A case manager heard it. Anyone who paused long enough got the same version. She took advantage, Linda said loudly one afternoon while a nurse checked vitals. I was vulnerable. The nurse nodded without comment and adjusted a monitor. Vulnerability didn't change billing codes. Family members rotated in and out, careful not to speak to me directly. Some avoided eye contact. Others offered advice without waiting for a response. This could still be handled privately, someone whispered. The word privately landed like a threat. At work, the pressure surfaced in a different way. An email from HR requested a meeting to discuss a concern. No details, no names. The calendar invite included my supervisor and someone I'd never met. The meeting stayed procedural. A complaint had been received. Not formal, not documented as misconduct, just noted. It mentioned stress affecting performance, the HR rep said. We wanted to check in. The source didn't need to be named. The timing made it obvious. Linda had reached beyond family. I'm managing my workload, I said. They reviewed recent metrics. Everything still met expectations. The HR rep smiled and closed her notebook. Let us know if you need support, she said. Support came packaged as observation. The system logged the conversation and moved on. Therapy continued on schedule. Sessions stayed focused on practical decisions, what to respond to, what to ignore, what consequences were unavoidable. During one appointment, the therapist glanced at the family call log on my phone. That's a lot of pressure, she said. They're consistent, I replied. She nodded, then asked what had worked before. Waiting, I said, letting things pass. The word sounded thin when spoken aloud. Back at the hospital, Linda escalated. A lawyer's name surfaced during a heated exchange with a social worker. I have options, Linda said. She can't just do this. The social worker explained the authorization again, slower this time. Linda waved her off. I was sick, she insisted. The explanation didn't change, neither did the outcome. Texts from relatives shifted tone. Fewer suggestions, more accusations. You broke her, one message read. Another accused me of choosing money over family. No one mentioned the wedding fund anymore. That detail had been edited out of the narrative. In the middle of it all, paperwork kept arriving. Notices, statements, updates marked urgent that required no action. Each one treated the situation as settled. One email from the hospital billing department thanked me for timely payments and confirmed upcoming charges would continue as scheduled. The language was cheerful. At work, a colleague asked whether everything was okay at home. The question hovered, polite and incomplete. Handling it, I said. The answer ended the conversation. Therapy invoices arrived on time, paid, filed. The system approved each one without comment. Family pressure reached its peak during a group call I hadn't agreed to join. Voices overlapped. Someone demanded an explanation. Someone else asked whether I understood the damage caused. Linda's voice cut through the noise. She planned this, she said. She waited until I couldn't stop her. That version stuck. It fit the outcome better than the truth. The realization arrived without drama. Silence had never protected anything. It had only delayed the cost. Each time I waited, someone else decided. Each time I absorbed it, the pattern held. The therapist asked what I would do differently next time. Stop assuming patience equals loyalty, I said. That answer didn't solve anything. It clarified it. Later that afternoon, an email came through from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, Legal Consultation Request. The message was brief. Linda was seeking legal advice regarding the transfer of funds. Further communication would follow. The wording was formal, careful, and vague. No accusations yet, just notice. I forwarded the email to a personal folder, labeled it, and closed the app. The workday still had hours left. A report needed review. A meeting reminder buzzed. The system kept moving. So did I. The attorney's email arrived without ceremony. No greeting, no reassurance. Just an attachment and a short sentence asking me to review the assessment. The document ran 8 pages. Plain language, no opinions. The conclusion sat near the end, separated from the rest by bullet points and citations. The transaction complied with all applicable regulations. The funds were dispersed for qualifying health-related expenses. Authorization was valid at the time of transfer. That was it. No gray area, no suggestion to mediate. Linda didn't wait long to respond. Her version shifted again, faster this time. The accusation no longer focused on theft, it moved toward character. She abused her position, Linda told anyone who would listen. That's not what the money was meant for. The phrase abuse of trust appeared in more than one message. Another relative repeated it back to me during a call that lasted less than a minute. This isn't about legality, they said. It's about ethics. Ethics, apparently, required interpretation. The system didn't bother. A formal review request landed next. Linda had asked the hospital to examine whether the transfer violated fiduciary responsibility. The wording sounded official enough to worry people who liked authority. The review took 3 days. Daniel Reyes called once the process wrapped. "They're closing it," he said. "No issue found." "Because?" I asked. "Because the documents line up," he replied. "That's all they check." He sent over a summary. Attached to it was a transaction history I hadn't seen before. It went back years. Small withdrawals, occasional larger ones, flights, hotels, items labeled miscellaneous. None had been flagged. None had been questioned. Each one fell under the same broad category, health-related expenses. The pattern wasn't dramatic. It was steady, familiar. No one had looked because no one had needed to. Family members stopped bringing up Hawaii once the list circulated. The defense shifted again. "That's different," someone said. "She needed those trips." The same logic recycled. The difference now was visibility. Linda tried another route, a call to the retirement fund administrator, speaker on, volume turned up. "I want to contest this," she said. "I was misled." The representative stayed patient. "Our records show multiple disbursements over several years," she said, "all authorized." "I didn't realize what I was signing," Linda argued. "The authorization is clear," the voice replied. "It includes mental health services." The call ended with an offer to resend the documentation. Linda stared at the screen like it had betrayed her. At work, things stabilized. No new complaints, no follow-ups from HR. The system had accepted the earlier explanation and moved on. Therapy sessions continued. The invoices kept coming. Paid, logged, approved. One afternoon, an automated message confirmed the next batch of payments had posted successfully. "Thank you for using our services." The line read like a courtesy. Family contact thinned out. Fewer messages, more silence. When someone did reach out, the tone had changed. "This is getting serious," one text warned. It already was. That part seemed to arrive late. Linda pressed harder at the hospital. She demanded meetings, requested second opinions, asked whether notes could be amended. Each attempt ended the same way. "This will remain on file," a case manager explained. "We don't remove records once a review is completed." "But it makes me look bad," Linda said. The case manager paused, then replied, "It reflects what happened." That was the closest anyone came to commentary. A formal notice followed. The review outcome had been documented. The file would remain as part of Linda's financial and medical record. Permanent, not punitive, just accurate. The word permanent echoed in later conversations. Linda used it like an accusation. Others treated it as a warning. "You've made this impossible to undo," one relative said. "That's usually how records work," I replied. The response ended the call. At the clinic, the receptionist handed me a copy of the updated statement. Everything balanced. No pending charges. "You're good through next quarter," she said. The normalcy of it all carried its own weight. Linda stopped asking me to come by. When she did call, the tone had flattened. No demands, no apologies either. Just updates delivered like obligations. "I'm talking to another lawyer," she said during one call. "That's your choice," I replied. She waited for more. None came. The final notice arrived on a Tuesday. A brief email from the hospital's compliance office confirming closure. "The matter has been reviewed and documented. No further action will be taken. The record will remain unchanged." I forwarded it to my personal folder, labeled it, and closed the app. A meeting reminder buzzed. Another task waited to be finished. Nothing had been fixed. Nothing had softened. The boundaries were simply recorded now, stamped with dates and signatures. That night, the phone stayed still. No calls, no messages, just the absence of noise where pressure used to be. The first change was administrative. A letter arrived from the firm Linda had contacted, addressed to both of us. It thanked her for the inquiry and explained in careful language that the case would not be taken. No grounds, no cause of action, no next steps. The letter did not mention feelings. I forwarded it to a folder labeled legal and blocked the number that had been calling twice a day. After that, messages stopped reaching me directly. Attempts came through other people instead. An aunt suggested a sit-down. "Just to clear the air," she said. "That won't be happening," I replied. She waited for justification. None came. The call ended on its own. Another relative tried a different approach, sending a long email about unity and forgiveness. The message stayed unread. Silence handled it better than explanation. Contact narrowed to what was required. Hospital updates arrived through official channels. Billing notices followed the usual format. Anything outside that stayed unanswered. The system seemed to approve of this arrangement. A notice from the retirement fund arrived the following week. The subject line was dry. Account access update. Linda's management authority had been adjusted. Future withdrawals would require secondary review. The letter didn't frame it as punishment, it called it oversight. Daniel Reyes called once more to confirm receipt. "They're standardizing controls," he said. "Happens when patterns show up." Patterns, I repeated. That's the word they use. At the hospital, the change showed quickly. Linda asked a nurse about a charge and was referred to the finance office. The finance office asked for documentation she no longer had authority to provide. The request stalled. She called me later that evening. "They won't listen," she said. "They will," I replied. "They just won't listen to me." The distinction mattered. She heard it. Family gatherings continued without me. Invitations stopped coming. A cousin texted once, unsure which side to choose. "I don't want to get involved," she said. "That's fine," I replied. Neutrality had a way of choosing anyway. At work, the atmosphere shifted back to routine. Projects moved, deadlines held. The earlier concern faded without follow-up. Performance metrics replaced rumors. One afternoon, HR sent a brief note confirming the previous issue was closed. No findings, no record beyond an internal log. The message thanked me for cooperation. At therapy, the focus changed. Fewer discussions about reaction, more about structure. What communication stayed open, what closed permanently. The therapist didn't frame it as healing. She called it maintenance. During one session, the phone buzzed with a message from Linda. "We need to talk," it read. The screen stayed dark. Later that week, another attempt came through the hospital's patient portal. A note marked urgent. I responded once through the same channel. "Please direct all non-medical communication through your attorney or the hospital office." The response came back quickly. "This is cold," Linda wrote. The system time-stamped it and archived the exchange. A family member called that night, frustrated. "She doesn't understand why you're doing this," they said. "She understands," I replied. "She just doesn't like it." The conversation ended without resolution. Documents continued to circulate. Each one reinforced the same outcome. No lawsuit, no appeal, no reconsideration. The paper trail had hardened. Linda's standing shifted quietly. Relatives who once echoed her version stopped repeating it. Some asked questions instead. Others withdrew entirely. Silence spread where certainty had been. During a hospital visit, a case manager mentioned the file review. "It's thorough," she said. "Everything's clear." Clear meant closed. At the clinic, the receptionist greeted me by name and confirmed the next appointment. "Payment processed. Balance current." "You're all set," she said. The phrase landed differently now. Linda tried one final tactic. A voicemail arrived late one evening, voice strained but controlled. "I don't know who you think you are," she said, "but this isn't over." It was. She just hadn't accepted the timing. The voicemail stayed saved, not for leverage, for accuracy. The following week, a formal notice arrived confirming the last adjustment to account permissions. The language was final. No further changes permitted without third-party review. I folded the letter, filed it, and returned to work. The reversal didn't announce itself. It showed up in small denials, requests unanswered, doors that didn't open, authority that stopped responding to volume or tone. Linda had no route left that didn't require someone else's approval. The phone stayed still longer each day. No new threats, no new demands, just the occasional update delivered without expectation. The balance had shifted without confrontation. No raised voices, no dramatic exit. Only systems doing what they do best, recording what happened and refusing to forget. On the way out of the office one evening, a notification buzzed. Another automated update confirming account restrictions remained in place. I cleared it without reading the details and kept walking toward the parking structure, already thinking about the next day's schedule. The last notice arrived the same way the others had. Automated, polite, final. The subject line thanked the recipient for cooperation. The body confirmed closure. No action required. A reference number sat at the bottom, followed by a signature that belonged to no one. Linda's retirement balance adjusted and stayed that way. No correction followed. No appeal reopened it. The number appeared on statements without commentary, smaller than before, and fixed. Oversight notes remained attached. Access stayed limited. Future requests required review by people who didn't know her and didn't need to. Paper replaced conversation. If contact happened at all, it came through letters with headers and dates, a request for records, a confirmation of receipt, a notice of restriction. None carried a personal tone. None asked for forgiveness. None offered it. At the hospital, a clerk explained the new boundaries without emphasis. All financial decisions go through the office, she said, not family. The sentence ended the matter. Linda didn't argue. She looked past the desk and gathered her things and left. Work kept its schedule. Loads moved, deadlines landed. Meetings started and ended on time. A supervisor asked whether I wanted to take time off. "I'm fine," I said. He nodded and returned to the agenda. Therapy continued, paid from the same source that had caused the uproar. The irony stayed administrative, not emotional. Each invoice listed services rendered and a balance of 0. The system approved the charge and thanked me for prompt payment. At one session, the therapist asked how contact was going. "Minimal," I said. She marked something on her pad and moved on. Linda never apologized. There was no last meeting to close things out, no shared coffee, no summary of lessons learned. The family didn't stage an intervention or a reconciliation. People adjusted quietly, choosing their distances. Some disappeared. A few remained, careful and neutral. One cousin sent a short message. "I hope you're okay." The message stayed unanswered. It didn't need a reply. At the clinic, the receptionist handed over a printed schedule for the next month. "You're set through June," she said. The words sounded ordinary. That was the point. A final letter from the retirement administrator arrived on a Friday afternoon. It confirmed restrictions would remain indefinitely. The language avoided blame. It favored accuracy. Records reflect authorized activity. Controls remain in place. Nothing more followed. After work, the day ended the way it usually did. Elevators filled, phones buzzed, someone complained about traffic. The exit doors opened and closed on a steady rhythm. Outside, people moved toward buses and garages, carrying bags that matched their routines. No one marked the occasion. No one needed to. Walking toward the parking structure, a notification popped up on my phone. Another automated message confirming an appointment. The reminder included a cheerful line about continued care. I cleared it and kept going. The balance sheet didn't lie. The consequences stayed contained. Linda's ability to interfere ended where the paperwork said it did. My accounts stood separate and sealed. Boundaries existed because they were written down and enforced by people who didn't negotiate feelings. There was no victory to announce, no relief speech to give, just a return to ordinary movement, keys in hand, bag on shoulder, tomorrow already scheduled. At the corner near the garage, a man asked whether the bus had already passed. Someone else answered. The conversation ended there. I reached the car, set the bag down, and checked the time. Traffic would be heavy. That was expected. The engine started. A radio host talked about weather and nothing else. Control didn't feel dramatic when it came back. It felt procedural. It arrived stamped, logged, and filed. And once it did, there was nothing left to argue over and nothing more to pay.